Hi everybody, my name is Dan Dubo and I am the Activate Manager at Motivate Canada. We're here right now in Ottawa with a live studio audience. We're at ACTIVATE Ottawa Mini, so it's a one-day forum that we're putting on here. This is actually thanks to the Ontario Trillium Foundation and the Sense Foundation for this group being here in Ottawa. But we're also part of a project called the Ontario, well, it's the Physical Literacy for Youth Leaders, funded by the Government of Ontario's Ontario Sport and Rec Communities Fund. In this project, we are putting together a series of videos and webinars that will be shared as resources on our online resource library on our website, motivatecanada.ca. So you may have seen some of these already, thanks to some of our great people like Bias, who you probably heard on previous videos, for putting these together and bringing together some of our experts. In a lot of cases, they're youth, youth from our programs, youth from other programs, partners and experts in different subjects. And we're trying to just pull together all kinds of resources that we think will help youth leaders run a successful community action project. In some cases we call it an Activate an Action project, but essentially it's just getting out there, taking charge and going for it to do something pretty cool in their community, something that builds into their passions, and finding a community need and actioning it. So right now, the workshop or webinar is about evaluating community projects, and we're working with YouthREX. So this is a new collaboration that we have with them, so we're very excited about that. I'll pass it over to the speakers in a second, but I do want to point out that evaluation, we chose this subject, is so valuable. It is something that we at Motivate Canada realize we need a lot of work on. We need our youth to understand the importance of it, because what we need is our youth leaders to report back to us what's happening out in the communities, what's working, what's not working, how many youth are impacting, because us at Motivate Canada, a national nonprofit organization, we need this, we need the stories, we need the impact, so that we could then in turn go to the funders, the government, sponsors, or even just for us to feel happy in the office. We need these stories to keep pushing on. So we're hoping that you capture out some of some useful tools and ideas and how-tos, and us at Motivate Canada will do our best to get our volunteers sharing or the tools they need so they can capture that information when they're doing their projects, and then report back to us, and it's a cycle with continuous improvement. So I think that's all I really need to say right now. Without further ado, I'll introduce YouthREX. Stephanie and Rachel, you want to take it away?
Great, thanks. So hi everyone, thanks for being here, and thanks for Motivate Canada for inviting us here to give us this webinar and this presentation. So I'm Stephanie Raslade. I'm the Regional Hub Manager for the Youth Research and Evaluation Exchange, or YouthREX for short. I'm here with Rachel Knott with us, who's our Master's in Social Work student doing her placement for this semester. So I'll let Rachel describe YouthREX a little bit to you, and then we'll get into the details of the presentation. Okay, so
okay, so YouthREX, our vision is an Ontario where shared knowledge is transformed into positive impact for all youth. And we are province-wide, so there's 5 sectors across Ontario, and we are part of the Eastern Hub, so we're housed at Carleton University, where I'm a master's student in social work. There's 3 objectives where we attempt to achieve our mission. So this first is knowledge mobilization. So this is where we're sharing relevant findings and information in accessible ways. We do this through the creation of research to practice papers, research summaries, and maintaining the Exchange, which is an online research database of youth research, and also through doing webinars and workshops like this one. Our second is capacity building. So this is facilitating evaluation and learning opportunities by building evaluation into youth organizations. So we do this again through events and workshops like this. We have an online evaluation toolkit, which we'll have a link to at the end that you can go and use, as well as we have an inventory of measures online, and we have a program called Noise, which actually just wrapped up last week, where we teach evaluation skills to youth 14 to 18 with a focus on community change. And lastly, we have our customized evaluation supports, which is when we support organizations one-on-one to plan and run an evaluation through consultation. So we're doing this with Motivate right now, and we sort of participate in every step of the process through planning, implementation, data collection, data analysis, and then also reporting. So just to get you guys started thinking about evaluation, we're going to do a quick activity. Sounds kind of silly, but follow with me. So think back to today's lunch, or I guess not specifically today's lunch, but in general. So in general, what do you want to get out of lunch? What makes a good lunch?
Not hungry after.
Yeah, filling. Yep.
Something that tastes good.
Tastes good, delicious.
Something that fills all your nutritional requirements.
Yep, got all the food groups in there. Anyone else?
Maybe eating with the friends or family.
Yeah, nice company. Yeah.
Cost effectiveness.
Cost effective as well, yeah. So we're going to call those our outcomes. So we want something that's cost effective. We want to share a meal with family, friends. We want all the food groups represented. We want to be full, energizing. We want something that tastes good. So thinking back to today's lunch, or again, if you're at home in the webinar, then so think back to your last meal. So what specifically did you like about today's lunch? What were your favorite parts?
Yeah, the soup.
The soup was really good.
Service.
Service?
Fast.
Yeah.
Company.
Yeah. Good.
The cost of free.
Yeah, free lunch. Who doesn't love a free lunch? Anybody else? Yeah, it was filling. We had all our food groups represented. And then, so also on the other side, so what do you think could have been better? What would you have done differently next time?
Dessert.
Dessert? You didn't get the mousse?
Oh, I know. I think it was dessert.
It was good. It was good. You missed out. Yeah.
The vegetables were actually kind of hard. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they were pretty hard.
The vegetables. Yeah.
I would have liked to have been more if the sauce was actually really spicy.
The sauce was pretty spicy. So from this, we can kind of see we had some success. So we're full. We had a tasty lunch. Some of us missed out on dessert, but we had a little sweet, little savory. But then we also have room for improvement next time. So maybe sauce that was a little bit less spicy, better veggies. So when you're evaluating programs, you want to look at your successes, what you've done, what you've achieved, but also there's always room for improvement in what you could do better next time, what you would change to make your program in general better. Okay? So I'm going to hand it off to Stephanie.
Yeah. So I got to talk you through the steps of an evaluation, but essentially what we did was just evaluate lunch. That seemed pretty easy, right? So we're going to get into some more technical information about program evaluation and more specifically how to apply it to community projects and the types of work that you're doing. But just a bit of background. So program evaluation is a systematic set of activities carried out towards understanding how, why, and to what extent a program is achieving its outcomes. Which sounds, again, really technical, but basically is just it's a way to assess what's happening in your program, what's working, what's not working, whether you're actually achieving those goals or not, and creating some next steps or recommendations to move forward with it. So I do use the term program a lot. Now, program is just a set of resources and activities directed towards a goal. So your action projects would be considered a program. So just wanted to clarify that if I use the term pretty interchangeably, that's what we're talking about. So why bother doing an evaluation? Well, evaluations can help improve your program. Gives you an opportunity to identify strengths, maybe some areas for improvement. You can actually come up with some recommendations and some next steps in that. It also helps build your organizational capacity, so it gives you tools to actually build your program into something bigger and a direction to take your program. You can also document progress towards your goals. You know, it's a little like math work that you can give the answer, but everyone really wants to see your work and the steps that you took. This is an opportunity to do that. It also can inform and refine community change efforts. So when you're working with a community, wherever that community is, you want to make sure that you're actually addressing the needs of that community. If one community has 6 soccer camps, you don't really need to put another soccer camp in there, but maybe it needs a baseball camp or a basketball camp. And so it's assessing what the needs are and how that your projects can actually meet those needs. It also can enhance personal growth and development with staff and participants, giving some feedback to you as organizers, to the staff as well that you're working with, to volunteers, and also recognizes your accomplishments. And this is really important because you want to have documentation of what you're doing well. Those are really important things for funders, for when you're reporting back to Motivate Canada as well. You want to be able to say that your program is doing some really great things, because they all are. We know there's some really great successes happening, but we want that documented so there's something to say that. So YouthREX has an evaluation model that we use. We focus on sort of 3 aspects of it. We go through what's called the discovery process, where we sit down with an organization or a program and we help them determine what their goals are and the activities that they're using to get there, what their outcomes are. We talked about outcomes at the beginning. All of those pieces, and we really map out exactly what that program is intending to do. Kind of your best case scenario. The second phase is more of the action side. It's actually going in and evaluating the program and starting to ask those questions about what's working, what's not, are we actually achieving our goals. And then the legacy phase is to inform others about what you've learned about it and take that information and put it into practice and moving towards making changes and positive changes in your community. So we're going to focus on the actual action phase, but the assumption when we're doing this action phase is that you generally know what your program is, what its goals are, what you're hoping to achieve, and you have a sense of that moving forward. So the evaluation process is pretty much like that scientific method that they talk about in science class that we all slept through, at least I did at the time, but it actually comes back. And it's a really pretty straightforward process. You have your program, you focus your questions, you design a study, collect some information, interpret that information, and inform others. So let's walk through the example of lunch for a little bit. So what kind of questions were we asking about our lunch? What were our evaluation questions? Yes?
Was it good?
Exactly. Was it good? That was one of our biggest questions. We wanted to know if lunch was achieving the goals that we were hoping it would achieve. Yes?
Were most of the questions we asked were focused towards our outcomes. So we were talking a little bit, so one of the positive outcomes we wanted was it was cost effective.
Yes.
So the fact that what was the cost, it was free.
Absolutely.
So focusing your questions based on your desired outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You want to look at the outcomes that you're looking for. Okay, so then we didn't really talk through the design process, but what Rachel and I sat down and talked about was that we were going to ask you guys those questions in what we call a focus group format, or like a discussion format as a bigger group. And that gave us opportunity for people to talk, for you to discuss a little bit about what you thought and what you thought about lunch, what you liked, what you didn't like. And so that was kind of the design of it. Then obviously we had the discussion, which would be sort of our collecting data phase. Normally when we do focus groups, we audio record them so you get the dialogue and use that as your actual information. Then we're going to analyze it right now. So what was the overall consensus about lunch? Everyone was happy with it. That's right. So how are we going to interpret that? So everyone satisfied with it, but we had a few little things that we could do to move forward with. So we can take that information and develop some recommendations, perhaps for the catering staff here. And we would go and inform others about what we thought about lunch and maybe come up with 1 or 2 points that they could use to improve. So that's essentially the evaluation process. So going just back to walk you through it in a little bit more detail and what it would look like if you're actually talking through or you're doing an evaluation with a program, is you'd have some evaluation questions. Again, these are some example questions. So is the program meeting its goals? What's working? What's not? Is the program more effective for specific groups of people or under certain conditions? So sometimes a program works really, really well for a certain age group. So if maybe 5 to 10-year-olds love this program, but 10 to 12-year-olds don't like this program. So those kinds of things are things to consider when you're evaluating. Are there certain things done to improve the program? And also, as Dan was saying, we want information that can help tell your story. So tell others about what's going on, to be able to tell what those successes are and being able to share that with other groups. So those are the kinds of evaluation questions you want to be asking. There are several different types of evaluations you can do, but we're going to focus on 2 main types today, outcome evaluations and process evaluations. So I'm going to use the example of Lego. Everyone all knows what a Lego kit looks like. So you get your Lego kit and you're all excited. You're going to build, I don't know, a Death Star. And you've got your plans, and it comes with the plans, and you build it. So you build it, and your outcome evaluation is looking at what you built. Did you actually build a Death Star? Or did you build something else? I can't think of a good Star Wars reference right now. But did you build an Ewok, as opposed to, that doesn't quite work, but sure, instead of your Death Star. And I know that sounds really silly because as you're going through it, obviously you would know when you're building Lego whether you built what you intended or not. But when you're talking about a program, it's a little bit more complicated. You know, if you're hoping to build networking opportunities, if you're hoping to build self-esteem, how do you actually measure that? How do you know when you've achieved that or not? The big, larger questions that come out of evaluations. But that is what an outcome evaluation looks at. Comparison, we have a process evaluation, which looks at the process of building it. So you might evaluate in your process evaluation what those plans were. If the plans were really straightforward and you were able to follow them really closely, there's parts of the plans that maybe weren't very good, and you know you got lost and built a piece that you shouldn't have. Were there pieces missing? All of those kinds of things are more the process side. And did you enjoy it? That's the other big question. Were you satisfied with your Lego kit, or did you want to do something different, or maybe you didn't enjoy building it at all and you would prefer to buy one already made? I don't know. So once you've established this, obviously your questions and your type of evaluation, then you're going to go into how to measure those things. And sorry, this does get a little bit technical, and I promise I will simplify it all at the end. So you're using 2 main types of methods, quantitative methods, so just numbers, statistics, to determine the most common responses, so things like you're averaging everyone's response to a particular question. And then qualitative methods, which use more about the descriptions and stories to better understand what's happening. So our little focus group discussion would be on the qualitative side of things. You can also do a combination of both, which we often do in the evaluation world. So you get different perspectives coming in and different information to help determine things. So quantitative methods are really precise measurements. So we've all done the surveys that you get. We have to fill out on a scale of 1 to 5. You fill out your little bubble, and then it goes off to some who knows where land and gets thrown on a shelf somewhere. We've all done those internet surveys. We've all done them in different places. Hopefully it's not just thrown on a shelf. But that is one way to do quantitative methods. You can ask questions around demographics, so understanding who's coming to your program, what ages they are, what their backgrounds are, anything really relevant that might impact their participation in your program. Also, changes in test scores are something that we look at in evaluation. So if you're measuring something before or after a program, that might change things. Attendance records as well. These are all more quantitative approaches. The thing is, you do need to know what you're measuring when it comes to this. So you need to know that you are looking specifically for a change in test score or self-esteem when you go in to do these kinds of things, because it's a much more precise measurement than, say, the more qualitative discussions. But there is more weight often to more quantitative measures. And when you're bringing it particularly to funders, they want to know the numbers. And so that's the benefit of doing these kinds of approaches. So just some examples. So this is a survey that we at YouthREX did with a leadership camp. I know it might be a little hard to see here in the audience, but so the first question is just, I felt physically safe. Or the activities promoted healthy habits, the atmosphere is positive. So all these different kinds of questions, and then the person rates on a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree, 1 to 5. And then you would take their responses, and say you had 20 people answer, you would take all 20 responses to question 1, and you would average it. So what was the average response? What does that tell us? There are all sorts of survey questions like this that you can use, technical, not technical, all sorts of options there. There's also another one is our demographic survey that you can look at. So looking at, collecting information on age, gender, ethnicity, what country you're born in, what's your schooling, all sorts of different questions there. And there you would look more at what the percentages would be, I think, to most answers. You might look at, what percentage of your population is male versus female, and things like that might tell you something about your program. There's also, this was just off the top of my head, so looking at comparisons, changes, sort of pre-survey versus post-survey questions, comparing numbers that way. This is a little bit more advanced when it comes to statistics, so I encourage you to do a bit more research if you're going to do this in terms of how to go about actually measuring those things. Sorry, body mass index. So on the qualitative side, these tend to be a little bit more user-friendly. They're more narrative approaches to collecting information. So you're exploring a topic or an experience. You might go to a group and you might ask them about how they felt about their program, and they can tell you about that. It also helps you understand why people are responding. So why did they like the program, as opposed to just, did you like the program or not? And you can also use open-ended questions to prompt more discussion. So you might have a room full of people that are discussing something and might actually make a decision based on that discussion. You can actually use that as part of your evaluation, as part of the analysis. There are lots of different ways to do qualitative methods. So what we did was more like a focus group type perspective. You can also ask questions on one-on-one interviews. Sometimes that's easier when you're working with a group of teenagers at different points, or maybe if it's really, really personal information that you're asking them, sometimes it's better one-on-one as opposed to the group. Just depends. You can also do observations, just having someone take notes of what's happening during your program. And there's also some really great arts-based methods. So this is just what we use at YouthREX, just noting the observations. So we're looking for things like reactions, interruptions, participant behavior. So are people looking like they're enjoying the activity, or do they look like they're bored and not really paying attention and off on their phone somewhere? That's going to tell you a lot about whether your activity is a good one or not and what you can do to improve it. And of course, arts-based methods are always really fun. These are just a few examples. This one's called Head, Heart, and Feet. So it gives you get the person to write down things, one thing they thought, one thing they felt, and what they're going to do with that information, like next steps. This one over here is an example from what we call a comics jam. So you get people to draw about their experiences or about a topic. And then one that's really common is called photo voice. It's used quite extensively now in research and evaluation. You actually give people cameras or get them to use their phones to go on and take pictures of their experience, and then you talk to them about that experience. All right, so then you have all this great information about your program. What do you do with it? First, you take all that information and group it together to try and get a common response. So what's the majority of the group saying about it? Quantitatively, you're using more statistical methods, so averages, percentages, those kinds of things. Qualitative, you're literally just reading through all the information you have and trying to group it into common themes. There are more specific information that I can direct you to on our website as well about how to go about doing this and what are the technical steps that you can go through. But the big thing really is about interpreting that information. So what does this information tell you about the program? And how does this answer your evaluation question? So way back when you decided you wanted to know, taking all this information, what does it tell you? How are you going to answer that question based on what you've collected? And then the third, which is I think the most important, is developing recommendations from this information. So making sure that you take this information and think about what can I do with it? What can I change to make things better for my program? And what are the next steps? And making them tangible as well. It's one thing to have, that you want to change the world in your realities, but you can't necessarily do that. So given your limited resources and given your limited scope, what can you do to make things better? So those are the steps to go through an evaluation, but there are some things to consider as you are going through one. So some big things to take into consideration when you're doing it. You always want different perspectives. So a really good example of this was recently I was working with a youth program, and the staff there thought that it would be a great idea to change this week-long program into a year-long program. And the funders were on board, and everyone was really excited about this idea. So we brought it to the youth in the program who had done the week-long course that they took. And the youth didn't want anything to do with the year-long program. They wanted it to stay a week because they thought they learned more if they were working that intensely together in a week-long format rather than the year. So it's one of those places where there's very different perspectives depending on who's looking at this program. And so it's really important to have those different perspectives and think about whose perspective you want when you're starting to ask those questions. Evaluation findings are also very specific conditions, specific programs, specific time frame. So evaluating a program one week might look very different than evaluating it with a different group of kids the next week. Or a program that's in one location might look different from another location. So just keeping that in mind as you go through the process. And the other one is just making sure there's confidentiality and consent, so that participants really feel that they're safe, that they can tell you what they truly think of the program, and that they're not being careful because they're afraid that there might be some sort of consequence for them saying their mind. Rachel and I were talking upstairs about how awkward it would be to have the discussion about lunch with the lunch staff, right, at the back of the room, and it is a reality. And so keeping things like that in mind, that maybe you need ways that are more anonymous ways to give feedback, making sure that, as program leaders, you might not necessarily want to be in the room when they're having those focus group discussions about what could improve on the program. All right, so now that's a ton of information to throw at you, I know that. And so we want to break it down a little bit more into what you can do with your action projects and setting them up for just ongoing evaluation, so that instead of it being this big process of step-by-step going through this model, it's already kind of set up for you, and there's just natural ways of getting feedback through your projects. So again, it's important to have ongoing tracking of what's happening in your program, because it gives you a chance to actually have opportunities for improving. When you start something new, we're all learning as we go. And so the first time you do something, you think, well, that was good, but we can make it better. And we can make it better the next time and the next time. And so giving yourself those opportunities to actually think about what's going on, finding some information maybe that'll tell you how to improve, and then moving forward and improving things. It's really great to have information for funders and grant proposals. I'm sure Dan can speak a little bit to this. They want tangible information that you can bring to say, look, our program's working really well, and so we think you should fund us because look at the great work that we're doing. So some different examples of things to include. Participant tracking is a really, really easy one. Attendance records, just count the number of people that are there. And attendance records over time are going to tell you a lot. If there's a ton of people at the beginning of your program, that tells you something. And if there's still a ton of people at the end of your program, after 10 weeks or whatever it is, that's going to tell you something too. It means that it's a really popular program. There's something that's working really well here. Maybe if there's only a few people at the beginning but lots of people at the end, that's going to tell you something as well. So keeping track of the number of people that are coming out to your programming and maybe a bit of information about them, even just something as simple as their age, what community they're from, that might tell you a little bit about who's coming out and whether those are the types of people that you're trying to bring into your program or whether you need to reach out to different groups. Formal feedback. We're actually going to get you guys to do a formal evaluation form for us here at YouthREX because that's part of what we do. But having those formal forms in order to be able to get feedback on your programming and what's happening so that it gives people an opportunity to say what they liked, what they didn't like, what could be improved. Also building in some staff or volunteer feedback opportunities, and debriefing sessions I really like because I like sitting down as staff and saying, okay, what worked, what didn't? Because there's days, especially with our noise program, where we sat down at the end of it and said, wow, that was a disaster, so what are we going to do next week to make it better? So just having those opportunities to sit down together and have those conversations, and then you can get some even just take notes of those conversations, and you have it documented, and then you have something to work with moving forward. And as well, again, note-taking, taking summaries of what happened, what you saw, what you observed, those kinds of things. And we just have a few examples. So this is our noise registration form. This is just attendance records, tells you a lot. This is an example of our evaluation form, so you'll get a chance to fill this out really shortly for those of you who are in the audience here. But this workshop was relevant and valued to my work with youth. Disagree, agree. These are more the quantitative questions, so 1 through, well, it's only half the form. So 1, 2, 3, 7, and 8 are all more quantitative questions, so you're rating it on a scale. 9 is more of a qualitative question. So what are some good things about this workshop? So that's an opportunity for you to truly write more of the, write a more open-ended response. And we actually do look at them and analyze them and take your feedback and incorporate them into the next workshop that we do. And so it's really great to have that feedback. I can tell you from firsthand experience. And this is just an example of our post-event notes form that we use. And this is just an opportunity for us to reflect in more of a formal way of writing up our debriefing sessions a little bit, looking at what happened during the program, reflections about what was going on, who was in the room at the time, questions that might have come up or ideas that might have come up, and then next steps. So what did we learn from the experience and what can we do moving forward? And these are really great opportunities. Just something as simple as this that takes me 15 minutes to write up at the end of a day. And so that's a really easy way to sit down and have some documentation about what happened moving forward. And then you can look at that over time. And maybe the next time you're in the program, you can take a look back at these notes and think about how you can improve things. So we have lots of information on our YouthREX website, And we actually have little postcards we're going to hand out to those in the room for the exchange, which is a website that has all sorts of resources. It talks about research on youth. It gives advice on youth programming. The summary and fact sheets that are in your packages are actually from that website. All sorts of really great information there. We also have a program evaluation toolkit. So it breaks down every step of the evaluation process, gives you lots of examples of what to do at each step, and that's on there as well. And then we also have a measures inventory. And this actually gives you some of the examples I've written, so example evaluation forms, example focus group guides, so the types of questions you can be asking. It gives you an outline of how to do art-based methods with different groups as well. So lots of really great information out there. There's tons of information about program evaluation. If you're really interested long-term, Ottawa U as well as Carleton actually have evaluation courses that you can take. You can be certified as an evaluator. And this long-term career goals, I will say that evaluation is something that has become more and more common in the world, and particularly if you are working in communities, if you're working with nonprofit organizations, evaluation is key. Funders want those numbers, your organization wants those numbers, and so it's something to consider looking at, not just for your individual community program, but long term. So that's it for us, but we're happy to take any questions. Go.
I actually want to comment with the importance on evaluation, and so I'm running this campaign with you, and I didn't really think about all the cool analytics that we get from our social media platform, but because of our reach and because of the numbers behind our reach, and as well as the qualitative, I guess, stories that we're presenting, we actually had funders come to us and say, you have this reach, this is how many people that you're going to, and these are the stories that you're getting out of it. We want to help you. So I think having this information, even at my point of being 22, or whether or not you start your own ACTIVATE Action project, if you want to do it another time, you have all these things to improve upon. We had our meeting yesterday night, and one of the things that I asked was, all right, what's working, what needs to be improved, and what can we do moving forward? So the think, feel, eat aspect. So I did it unintentionally, but now thinking about that, I could improve even on the evaluation aspect of the campaign.
And just adding to Brad's comments, just working in high performance sports, so we have our, I guess, quantitative results of winning a gold medal, but more of the process. So we collect feedback from our coaches, our judges, like an investment of $50,000 to attend an international event. We have the results of a medal or placement, so the actual athletic performance, but it's more kind of the processes and outcome to get there, and the experiences our athletes have, or our coaches have, or our judges, and the management, and putting that all together to developing next steps and moving forward, and to really evaluate beyond the results, or beyond the medal results, if it was worth it. So it's super beneficial in understanding something like this at a small scale level, so we're doing a school event and understanding the benefit and where to run with it, to professional through your career.
Well, and it's something that's easily built in if you start from the beginning. It's a little bit harder if you've been going for a few years and then you're like, oh, maybe we should evaluate this. Then it takes, sometimes it can take a little bit more effort. Whereas if you're, as you're building your community projects, if you start putting these really simple things in place and get into the practice of just doing debriefing notes every day, or you know, keeping track of who's coming out to your programming, those, like that information, that collected information is huge, even if you're not necessarily putting it into use right away. You know, when you do want to sit down and evaluate it, you have that already collected, and that makes a huge difference for helping with this process and just for moving forward. But you know, I always think of examples. I know we're all sick of filling out surveys a lot of the times, because that's something that we all do and we're kind of bombarded with. But I know I've been to events or things where I think, man, this would be great only if they did this one thing differently, you know? And there are those moments where you think, I really wish I could give them this feedback because this is good, but there's just these two things that they could just improve upon. And so this gives you an opportunity as someone who's organizing events or fundraising or working with your community. This is actually giving you an opportunity to get that feedback from people, giving them an avenue to give you that information so that you can make your event not just good but really great, and that it's really reaching out to the people that you're trying to reach. Yes?
I think it's also interesting, and we're always touching on the grant aspect, but even to ourselves, we can evaluate where we are, and I guess what we're doing in the current time and what we want to do in the future, and whether or not those align. We can take those times to reflect and use these evaluation tools, I guess, to better ourselves and to better where we're going in the future.
Just more of a question towards the toolkit and the resources you guys offer. Maybe you could speak to some research about this. I know there's tools like SurveyMonkey and further surveys and online methods and on paper. Is there any research or in terms of effectiveness? I know it all depends on the program, but can you speak to like SurveyMonkey is the best resource, or YouthREX has done investigation and being like, this is the best one, so let me recommend it.
In terms of online tools, it really just depends, and the reality is the better tools are paid tools. I mean, that's just unfortunately the reality. It really doesn't matter too much in terms of the online survey process, because they all have generally the same idea. Your surveys on Fluid Survey versus on SurveyMonkey are going to look pretty similar. It's just slightly different formatting, and it's just the reporting that the company gives you at the end that you might get out of. So there might be some extra features in one that you don't get in the other. But those are pretty good. Personally, I'm still a paper survey person. One, because you can watch the person and make sure you get it back, because it's really hard when you give online surveys to actually get them back. I'm not saying that you should stand there and read their answers as they're filling it out, but it can be really tough. We all get emails all the time about surveys to fill out, and I know I'm pretty sick of it, to be honest, and I'm an evaluator, so I do this for a living. But it's easier to fill it out in the moment, during the program, at the end of your program, like right now, getting you guys to fill this survey out. If you were to do this tonight or tomorrow or in a couple days, are you going to say the same things? Maybe not. Are you going to, are you even going to get to it? Or, are you going to kind of forget about it and then not get back to it? So doing it, I'm a big fan of doing it right away. You sit down, you take 10 minutes after your program and you do debriefing notes right then and there. And so it's done. It's right when you have it fresh in your mind, and all that information is available to you moving forward. So that's just my personal experience. There's no real research particularly on what works best and what doesn't. It depends on the group of people you're working with as well. It works really well in this kind of setting to do pen and paper, but I know for the people on the webinar, obviously that's not an option. So those are kind of the constraints that you work in, and whatever works best for you. Yes?
I think people used to, like, when I have surveys, I also really like, you usually really want to get it done quickly.
Yeah.
But I'm imagining from your standpoint, like, I think surveys that you appreciate the most is when people like really take an effort and actually think while they're figuring out when they're completing it. And even going like above and beyond of it, and like thinking of like something a bit more innovative or creative. Do you know if there's anything that programmers or programs and developers can do to help encourage people to be more interested in that as well?
Yeah, so the arts-based methods are a really great way to do that. The head, heart, and beat is the simplest arts-based method I've ever seen. And it just gives you more of a visual. It's getting feedback about things that you thought about, things that you felt, and then things you can do moving forward. Like that seems pretty simple, but already you can already think about it in a different way as opposed to let's fill out this survey that asks the same things. And so using creative ways like that are really, really great. One organization I'm working with, we're going to do a graffiti wall. So it gives youth opportunities to draw or write things that they felt about the program that they've experienced. And so we're just covering a wall with paper and getting them to write and draw all of their things. So there's some really great, really easy ways to get feedback that aren't necessarily the pen and paper, fill out these 10 question kind of ways. There's lots of ideas on the exchange itself and the measures inventory as well that you can maybe take a look at, but those would be some of the ways I would suggest. You're welcome. Okay.
I just have a question and a comment.
Sure.
First comment is just related to Motivate Canada, and I'm hoping all our activators out there do. Like, we will have a resource that we'll share through our website, and as well as we can to many future activators. But ages of the youth are important to us. Attendance numbers are important to us. If they have partners, if they have, and what activities are they doing? So just off the bat, anybody who's listening and paying attention to this webinar, there might be a quiz question later on that we send out. But those are the kinds of things we'll be looking for. So whether they're asking their youth or just what they're collecting from their participants, that's what we're looking for. So that's my comment. The other one for confidentiality. So that's a big thing, and especially if we're trying to measure change in a group. So if I send out a pre-form survey, such as we did for this event, and then afterwards I want to send out another post-form survey, which will have very similar questions. I want to see, is there a change? Did they feel confident before? Do they feel more confident now? Did we have some kind of effect in that? But you can't do, then it's not a anonymous.
No.
So any
suggestions? Yeah, so there's different ways to do it. So you can look at group change. So you can, instead of having to worry about anonymity or anything like that, you can look at, as a group, what was their answer, what was their average answer versus what was their average answer post-event, and you can look at the differences that way. The other way to do it in research is we assign numbers. So there are some software ways to do this that, off the top of my head, I don't know. Yeah, so you assign, so instead of a survey having my name on it, there is like a separate file that says, okay, so Stephanie is subject A, subject 1, 101, whatever you want to say. And then when I fill it out the second time, it says, I fill it out and it says, okay, this is subject 101, filling it out the second time. And so that's usually the way we do it in research. There are technical ways, like there's software ways to do that where you can send people unique survey links, I think, and it'll track those kinds of things. I don't know if
it's a unique survey link, but sometimes how is that not, like how is that, can I really find out who that person is because it's
well, I mean, it's one of those accepted challenges in that the hope is that it might be a unique survey link, but in that unique survey link, it's set up as a number. Right? And when you're looking at this information, you're not looking at what did Rachel say? Like, what was Rachel's change pre and post program? You want to be looking at everyone, right? And so the idea is, yes, you can match up to see what Rachel was at the beginning and Rachel was at the end, but overall as a group, when you're running all of those numbers statistically, or when you're looking at it over time, you're saying, okay, as a group, what are we seeing? So it's less about the individual change and more about the group itself.
sounds good.
Great. Great.
Awesome.
Thank you. So we